I say the word snow, Sierra, pioneers, and tragedy, what comes to mind? Chances are you might think of the Donner Party because they were pioneers who were stuck in several major snowstorms in the Sierra, and tragically, half their party died. Well, that happened way back in 1846, but here's what I want you to think about. Just 20 years later, the railroad would carry passengers safely over that very same mountain range that proved to be the doom for the Donner Party. How exactly did they do that? After all, the Sierra is one of the snowiest places on Earth. Snow falls in feet instead of inches there. But the railroad knew exactly what to do. In times when the snow got so heavy that no other means would be able to take care of that, what did they do? They called the Rotary Snowplow to the rescue. Hi, everybody. My name is Debbie, and I want to welcome you to California State Parks Ports Home Learning Program. PORTS stands for Parks Online Resource for Teachers and Students. I'm a guide here at the California State Railroad Museum, located in Old Sacramento State Historic Park in Sacramento, California. And we have a really exciting program scheduled for you today. We are going to learn all about this amazing machine behind me, the Rotary Snowplow. With the help of two of my co-workers, Alex and Amanda, you're going to learn about snowfall in the Sierra, about how the railroad handled that snow, and about how this rotary snowplow works. And then we're going to go way up there inside and see what it's like inside one of these rotary snowplows. But before we get started, I'd like to know a little bit more about you. So using that little hand signal at the bottom of your screen there, how many of you are visiting us today from California? Maybe a few minutes. What's that?
Like half or so.
Do we have a number?
Does it say a specific number now?
23. Ah, great. We have 23 of you visiting us from California. Do we have anybody visiting from outside of California? Four people from outside of California. And one last question. Is there anybody here visiting from outside of the United States? Two. We have two people. Well, welcome to everyone. We're so excited that you're here. I am not going to delay this any farther anymore. I'm going to introduce my coworker Amanda here. We're going to switch microphones, and she is going to take over from here. Thank you. Here we go, folks. Let me just gear up real quick.
So hi there, everybody. My name, as you just heard, is Amanda. And today we're going to be talking about snow and snowstorms in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. Now, some of you may not be familiar with the Sierra Nevada. You can see it right here on this map. It's on the eastern side of California near Nevada. It's 700 miles long and 40 miles across. I grew up here in the Central Valley of California, where it stays pretty warm year-round and it basically never snows. When I was little, my family used to take me to the Sierra Nevada just so I would get to see all of the snow there. So if you're like me and you grew up somewhere it doesn't snow, you might be wondering what the big deal is. Don't people make snowballs and snowmen out of snow? Why do we need a huge piece of equipment like this to deal with it? Well, snow is a lot heavier than you'd expect, and the Sierra Nevada mountain range is especially prone to heavy snowstorms. The Tahoe area is the target of powerful weather systems from the Pacific Ocean, and Donner is 7,000 feet above sea level, which means it gets even colder and windier than other parts of the Sierra Nevada. So I want you all to make a prediction for me. How much snow do you think falls over the course of a year in Donner? Do you think it's enough snow to cover up a normal-sized car, enough snow to cover up a one-story house, or enough snow to reach all the way to the top of a telephone pole? I'm going to give you guys some time to answer, and I want to see what you say. How's it looking?
A couple more seconds. As tall as a one-story house with 13 people.
All right, so a lot of you guys said one-story house, and that is a very reasonable observation to make. I'm sure you see in media all the time houses covered in snow. But believe it or not, the answer is actually the telephone pole. Every year, on average, about 35 feet of snow fall in Donner. It's also not uncommon for 10 feet or more to fall in a single storm. And just for reference, this rotary snowplow I'm standing in front of right now is 17 feet tall. So that means over the course of a normal year, enough snow falls to cover 2 of these stacked up on top of each other. And that's just in an average year. There have been many years that were much snowier. In 1880, 65 feet of snow fell in Donner, and 25 of those fell just in April. There was a 3-day period where every 24 hours, another 2 feet of snow fell. The absolute snowiest year we know of was 1938, when 83 feet of snow fell in Donner. And just for reference, 83 feet is taller than an 8-story building, or about half the height of the Statue of Liberty, if you don't count the podium. So that means it would reach all the way to here. That is a lot of snow to keep up with. And trains cannot push through all that snow by themselves. Getting stuck in the snow is really, really dangerous. One of the most famous examples of this happened in January of 1952. The passenger train, the city of San Francisco, was trapped for 3 entire days in the snow. It snowed 67 feet that year and 13 feet just the week everybody was trapped. There were 226 passengers on board, and while they were trapped, they had no way to heat or feed themselves. It was really, really dangerous. Luckily, the rescue teams were able to get everybody out safely using rotary snowplows just like this one. I hope I've made it clear just how dangerous snow can be and why the rotary snowplow is important. But 1952 was a really, really different time from the 1870s and the 1880s. So what did people do before they had rotary snowplows? Did they just wait around for it to thaw? That would take months. Well, my friend Alex is going to shed a little bit more light on what people did before they had a rotary.
Hi there, my name is Alex, and I'm going to talk to you about the history of battling snow in the Sierra. Have you ever had to move snow? If so, how would you go about it? Would you A, push it, B, throw it, C, wait till spring, or D, ask it politely? I'm going to give you a few minutes to answer this question. Well, you can't exactly ask snow to move politely, but you can push it, you can throw it, and you can wait till spring. But the railroad didn't exactly have time to wait all the way till spring. So take measures. And for all this fancy technology, we have one simple tool. A shovel. Now, snow in the Sierra is trouble. But it's wet, heavy, thick. So this is a perfect concoction to make this snow, but it settles. It's solid as cement. So, hence its nickname, Sierra Cement. And so during the winter, the railroad would send out 100 men to go out and clear the tracks of snow, just with a little tiny shovel. Can you imagine being out there? Freezing, blinding conditions. You can hardly see your hands in front of your face. And all you got is your shovel and miles full of track in front of you. Doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun to me. So, winter of 1865, because 66 was so horrible that the railroad was like, okay, we need a better solution than just a shovel. And so we came up with something called the bucker plow. Bucker plow. That's a weird name. Why is it called the bucker plow? Well, it's all it has to do with the function. So you say you have your little bucker plow here, right? It's a big old snowdrift. How do you get rid of that snowdrift? What you do is you take your bucker plow and you smack it right into that snowdrift as fast and as hard as you possibly can. Build up enough speed and momentum to do this. It takes a lot of power. That's what you have. You have your bucker plow, but behind it, you have 6 to 11 locomotives all lined up behind it, going as fast as they possibly can to build up enough strength and momentum to move, buck all that snow. And so, you might be thinking, that's a lot of energy to spend moving snow. And so the railroad was like, we need to roll this back one more time. And thus, Rotary Snowplow was born. Nowadays, we don't always break out Rotary Snowplow. Or, for example, another thing called joint spreader, which is what we now use to kind of clear track a little bit more efficiently than this guy. It's a machine with 2 long arms. It's made to push all that snow off the track. So again, every time snow falls in the Sierra, we don't exactly break out the bucker immediately or the Rotary Snowplow now. But every now and then, winters get so harsh, so fierce, that we have no choice but to bring out this guy. So Amanda is now here to talk to you a little bit how this guy works.
All right, everybody, it's me, Amanda. I'm back. So we've covered why the rotary snowplow is important and what people did when they didn't have access to rotary snowplows. But we haven't talked so much about how they work. And I don't know about you, but I'm really curious. So to start us out, I want you to look at this model I have right here of the rotary snowplow. I want you to look at all angles of it, really get a good look at it. And I want you to tell me in the chat, go ahead and open up the chat, what you notice about it. How is it similar or different from other machines and other trains that you've seen before in your life? Let me know your observations.
Big red thing in the front.
Big red thing in the front, yes. Seems like some of you guys are mentioning the big red blades. And you know, I can't blame you. They're really, really hard to miss. And they're also super important because they do the actual snow removal. And I know that they look kind of intimidating. They probably look sharp, but they're not. They're really not. Look, touching it with my bare hand, it doesn't hurt at all. They remove snow using something called centrifugal force. And that might be a term you've heard before in science class or in media or just in general conversation. If you've ever seen someone swinging a lasso over their head, or if you've ever used a hula hoop, you've seen centrifugal force in action. When something moves in a circle around a central point, it gets pushed away from that central point. So the rotary snowplow removes snow by chopping it up with these big blades and then spinning fast enough to throw it off to the side and safely off the tracks. Now, I have another question for you all. What do you think powers these big old blades? We're gonna have another poll question. I wanna know what you guys think it is. Is it an engine, a battery, a snail, or Christmas spirit? I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of time to get your answers in.
%94 said engine.
Okay, most of the vast majority of you guys said engine, and that is a very, very reasonable assumption to make because engines do power things. But believe it or not, the answer is actually snail, and I know how silly that sounds. Well, When you guys think of trains, you're probably thinking of locomotives like Thomas here. So locomotives are big train cars that burn some kind of fuel like coal or wood or oil or diesel to create the energy necessary to pull heavy loads. Now this rotary snowplow right here is not a locomotive. It cannot go anywhere by itself. So it relies on locomotives to get it from place to place. Now back to that snail. It's technically actually called a B unit, and I have a model right here to show you all. So the B unit powers all other aspects of the rotary snowplow that aren't associated with it moving. So the B unit would power its lights, the blades, keeping the cabin warm, all of that kind of stuff. So the B unit, or snail, is just as important as the rotary snowplow and the locomotive. So just to review, if you're ever in a situation where the train tracks are covered in snow and you need to get rid of them, you're going to need three very important things. First, you need a rotary snowplow like this to get rid of the snow. Second, you need a B unit like this to power that rotary snowplow. And third, you need a locomotive like Thomas here to keep it all moving. So this process requires a lot of teamwork. And that makes me think, yeah, people run these things. And there's people up inside the cab of this rotary snowplow. Well, if you're curious about what it's like in there, I'm going to give you back to Debbie, and she's going to give you an insider look at the rotary snowplow.
Well, thank you so much to Alex and Amanda. I hope that really helped clarify a few things for you about the rotary snowplow and how it works. I also want to thank one of our docents here at the museum. Docents are our volunteers, and that's Mr. Bill Bender, who actually made this model of the rotary snowplow and the snail or the bee. So thank you to him for allowing us to borrow these. And you know what? I don't want anything to happen to these, so can we put them back in the box? They're very fragile. Awesome. All right. Well, before we go up into the cab, we have one more poll question for you. And I have brought out two articles of clothing here. You see that I have a big heavy parka in one hand, and I have an Aloha shirt in the other. And I want you to think about the experience of operating one of these rotary snowplows. What do you think that would be like? If you were inside up there in the cab, driving it through some kind of a blazing blizzard snowstorm, what do you think you'd have to be wearing inside that cab? Would it be a big heavy parka or an Aloha shirt? And be careful, because you might think I'm tricking you here. May not be the obvious answer, or it might be. So I'm going to meet you upstairs in the cab in just a minute, and we'll find out the answer to this poll question. Okay, are you ready to get started? Follow me. Well, welcome everyone to the inside of the snowplow front cab. It's not very big, is it? You might have thought for a machine this big that the inside might be a little bit bigger, but as far as the front goes, this is it. We'll show you a little bit more of the other side of the door as we go on. But first, I wanted to get to our poll question. So you can see something hanging here on the wall, and it's the Aloha shirt. How many of you answered the Aloha shirt for the answer to that poll question I asked you a little while ago? If you did, you were right. Now, it doesn't seem like quite the obvious answer, and why would this be the answer? The inside of this cab was heated by a steam generator. Why steam? Well, the steam helped to defrost the windows, it heated the cab, and it kept the rotary blades from freezing.
So it would have been a very hot and wet and sweaty environment in here. Now, I can't guarantee that the men that were inside this cab actually wore aloha shirts. They could have if they wanted to, I suppose, but they probably just wore regular t-shirts. One thing we know they didn't wear was a big, heavy parka because it was too hot in here. Are you ready to see the rest of the cab? Well, let's get started. Well, here we are standing on the inside of this ultimate snow fighting machine. It could move 5 tons of snow in a minute at a distance of 150 feet, and it can dig through any amount of accumulation. Now, there would be a conductor who's the boss of the train and responsible for the train, an engineer, a fireman, and 2 brakemen aboard. The engineer and fireman would be in the front cab here, in the rotary cab. The rest of the crew could ride in the cab of the pushing locomotive, or that B unit or snail that we were talking about. They'll usually have also a machinist and an electrician on board, because rotaries are big machines with a lot of mechanical parts. And if anything goes wrong, it's important to have people on board who could fix the problem. They could ride in the warm, dry, comfortable cab of the locomotive. They didn't necessarily have to be up here. Well, as we take a look around here, what do we see? You see a series of 4 windows in the front, but the windows might look a little different from maybe the windows on your car. That's because they have rotating panes of glass that keep the snow off the windows. It's a better solution than those windshield wipers on your car, because those would freeze up and cause problems. Over here, just below the window on the right side, you see a lever with a knob. Now, if we take a close look there, there's some writing. It says throw left and throw right. Can anyone guess what this might control? It actually moves the snow chute from right to left. Now, why is that important? If you remember Amanda talking about how the snowplow would blow the snow off the tracks, well, sometimes the tracks might be on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. And as the snowplow is going through with the snow, you don't want to blow it back on the tracks, so you have to be able to control the direction that the snowplow would be shooting the snow from. So that's how you would control that. And there's one on the left-hand side as well. Next to the knob, we see these 5 valves, and those are actually the controls for the defroster on the right side of the cab where we are, as well as the cab's heater. Very important controls. Here we are in the center of the cab. All power controls for the rotary are in the center due to a lack of visibility from snow being blown from left to right. You see here pusher power. The pusher power controls the pushing of the locomotive. The 8-notch controller controls power coming from that B unit or the snail to the rotary blades. So you see this says hump. Hump controls the forward or reverse speed of the whole consist. That means the rotary, the B unit, and the locomotive. You see this control panel with gauges and control switches, including these 2 red buttons, which are the emergency stop buttons. This control panel also has the controls for headlights, defrosters, and anything else that they'll be needing. Next, we're going to look overhead, and we're going to see controls for whistles, horn, bell, and sanders. You might have to put sand down on the tracks to get some extra traction. And as you look around, you might notice that there's a lot of peeling paint on the ceiling. And that's because, well, this machine is over 100 years old. And it's showing a little bit of wear and tear. You see that there's a lot of dust around, and spider webs. But that's just because it has been sitting here and it hasn't been used in several years. So as we move on, we're on the left side of the cab, and we don't have to go through all of the knobs and things because they're exactly the same as the ones that we saw on the right-hand side. So we've moved all the way around the front of the cab. That brings us to the back here. And there are a few things that I want to point out to you. One thing is what happens if they get thirsty. We can see there's a cup holder here and a fountain. And we all thought it was kind of interesting. When you look at the shape of the cup, it looks a little bit like a snow cone, which would be appropriate, wouldn't it? Above there, we have a place for the clipboard for the instructions and things that they need to know. Doubt they would have an Aloha shirt hanging up here. Let's take a look at this up here. There are some numbers, 205, and then it says 250,980 pounds load weight. So 205 is the number of the snowplow, and that's how much the snowplow weighs. It's pretty heavy. We've got some hooks so that they can hang clothes up. There's a first aid kit here, which would be important. And I also just wanted to point out that if you had some extra crew members here, they could actually pull down some seats and sit right here. So they could fit a lot of people in the cab if they wanted to. Well, that really concludes our tour of the front cab. But I think you might like to know a little bit of what exists behind that door. If you do, follow me. So what's the answer to that question? What's back here? There are a lot of motors and wires and all the mechanics that it takes to run the rotary snowplow. The water tanks are here, and this one says 1,600 gallons. And there's one other thing, I don't know if we can see right back there. That's actually an emergency stretcher. So if there was an emergency and someone was injured and had to be taken out, they did have an emergency stretcher here. And all the other things you can see that it would take to run this big unit. Okay, that's the end of the tour, everybody. Thanks for joining me, and we're gonna meet you back downstairs.
All right, well, here I am again, and I want to thank you all for joining us for our Snowplow to the Rescue Ports program. We're gonna show you a little video right now so you can see what the snowplow actually looked like in action. And if you have any questions, we'll come back after that video and see if we have any time left to answer a few questions. All right, well, what did you think of that? It's pretty amazing to see it in action, isn't it? I think they called the Rotaries out in December of this year, or actually last year, because we had a lot of snowfall. up in the Sierra. We really need more snowfall now, but that's another story for another day. So we do have a few questions that I'd like to see if I can answer for you. It seems like one of the questions we get asked a lot is, how old is this? Well, this rotary happened to be built in 1920. So it's actually 102 years old. So as I said, it's pretty old, but I think it shows their age pretty well. Another question we got, and this is something that we really didn't go into a lot of depth explaining, is how does it turn around? So when we're talking about those 3 units, we have the rotary snowplow, the snail, the B unit, and the locomotive. If this were going up in the Sierra, it wouldn't be able to turn around, right? Because it's on a railroad track. And that story that Amanda told you about the city of San Francisco getting stuck in 1952 in the Sierra, this was one of the problems that they learned when they kept sending rotary snowplows up there, and they would get stuck and there was no way to turn around. So after that 1952 incident, here's how they solved that problem. We have the rotary snowplow, the B unit, a locomotive, another locomotive, another B unit, and then a rotary snowplow. So that way, if this unit, this consist, they call it, if this consist is going up, it could just go back the other way. So that solves the problem of turning around. And do we have any other questions? See there, one more?
Do they have a bathroom?
Do they have a bathroom? Of course, what a great question. I really don't know the answer to that. I didn't see a bathroom up there, did you guys?
I think they just go outside, right?
We're gonna have to find that out. You got us on that one. Well, with that, I want to thank you on behalf of California State Parks and the California State Railroad Museum. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you again next week, next Tuesday. We will be doing a program called What a Great Idea. We'll be talking about inventions, inventors, and because it's Black History Month, some Black inventors who invented some great things for the railroad. So hopefully we'll see you again next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.